The Stranger. What if a video of you not crying at a funeral went viral? Chapter 1. My mother died today. Or maybe yesterday, I can't be sure. The message from the care home said only that she had passed, that they were sorry, and that I should call about the arrangements. It didn't say when. It could have been today. It could have been yesterday. I noticed that I wanted to know the exact hour, and then I noticed I didn't know why I wanted to know, since it would change nothing, and I let it go. Later, a great many people would decide that I could let it go, was the first sign of what I was. I asked my manager for 2 days. He said, of course, take whatever I needed, and then held his eyes on me a moment longer than the words required, waiting for my face to do something. I didn't have anything for my face to do. He said it again, softer, take the time, whatever you need, in the voice people save for these occasions, and I said thank you, and I heard how flat my thank you was, and I watched it land on him as a small piece of information he filed away. I did not know then how many people would later file that same information, or what they would build out of it. The home was 3 hours by bus. It was hot. I slept most of the way, and when I woke my neck ached and my mouth was dry, and I thought about my mother, and what I mostly felt was the heat and the dryness. This is the part I have learned you must never say. People need you to tell them that on the bus you remembered her laugh, her hands, some afternoon from your childhood. The truth is that I thought about the heat, and that the dead are dead, and that the ride was long, and that I was thirsty. I have decided to keep saying the true version, because it is the only thing in all of this that is still mine, and because the false version is what they wanted, and wanting it is what they did to me. I loved my mother, I did. It is only that loving her and performing the grief for her turned out to be 2 separate activities, and I could do the first and not the second. It took me a long time, and all the trouble that came after, to understand that most people cannot tell those 2 apart, and that they will judge you entirely on the second, because it is the only one they can see. A man's love is invisible. Only his performance of it can be filmed. At the home, a woman walked me to a small room to discuss the arrangements. She asked if I wanted to see the body before it was prepared. I said it didn't matter. She looked at me. I understood, a half-second too late, that "it doesn't matter" was the wrong line, that the correct line was "yes, of course, I need to see her," and that I had failed to produce it, not from coldness, but because it was simply true that seeing her would not make her less dead. That reasoning, however sound, is exactly the kind of thing you must never let out of your mouth. So I corrected it. I said, "Yes, I'll see her." Her face eased. I had gotten it right on the second try. I was already learning that grief is a script with correct lines and incorrect ones, that I had never been handed the script, and that everyone around me seemed to have been given it at birth and to have been rehearsing it quietly their whole lives. They had done her hair in a way she never wore it. I stood by the box and looked at her and waited to feel the thing I was supposed to feel, and what came instead was a small, precise thought, which was that the woman in the box was not my mother but an arrangement of my mother, prepared by strangers to be looked at, and that the real one had already gone somewhere that had nothing to do with this room. I did not cry. I want to be exact about it because the whole of what followed turns on it. I did not cry, and it was not that I held it back, and it was not that I was numb. There was simply nothing in me that needed to come out through my eyes. I felt her death the way you feel a large fact, the way you feel that the sea is deep, or that you will one day die yourself, completely and without tears. I did not know that a fact felt this way is worth nothing to other people, that they need to see it converted into water and salt before they will believe you felt it at all. Chapter 2. The service was the next day. It was small. A few of my mother's friends from the home came, old people who sat very still in the plastic chairs, and I remember thinking that for them a funeral was no longer a rare catastrophe but a standing appointment, the way it becomes when your whole generation starts going out like streetlights at dawn, one and then another and then a whole block at once. One of the old women cried. I watched her cry and felt nothing move in me, and what I felt instead, honestly, was the heat and the smell of the flowers, which was too strong, and a low, steady wish for it to be over so I could sit somewhere cool and drink something cold. These are not the thoughts of a monster. I have gone over them many times since, looking for the monster in them, and I cannot find him. They are only the thoughts of a body in a hot room. But a body in a hot room, filmed and captioned, becomes a monster very easily. That is the thing I did not know. There was a younger man there with a phone, a relative of one of the other residents. I noticed him because at one point he raised the phone the way people do now, to capture the room, the flowers, the occasion. I don't know what. I didn't think anything of it. You see phones held up at everything, at concerts and dinners and sunsets and accidents. A whole species that has decided nothing is real until it has been recorded and shown to someone who wasn't there. It did not cross my mind that I was in his frame, or that my face, which was doing nothing, which was only my face at rest, the face I have worn my whole life without complaint from anyone, would later be legible to millions of strangers as the face of a man who did not care that his mother was dead. My face has never cared what it looked like to others. This turned out to be the most expensive quality I owned. Afterward, I didn't stay. There was nothing to stay for. The old people shuffled back inside where it was cool, and I stood in the parking lot in the sun and felt relief, an actual physical relief that the hard part was finished, the way you feel when a long dental appointment ends. I have learned not to say that either, but it's true, and I've decided to keep it, along with the rest of the true things, in the small pile of true things that is all I have left. I took the bus back that afternoon. The next day was Saturday, and on Saturday I did the thing that, laid beside the video, would finish me. I went to the beach. Let me explain about the beach, though I have learned that explaining does no good, that the explanation is taken as further proof, that a man who explains why he went to the beach the day after his mother's funeral is somehow worse than a man who simply went and said nothing. I went because it was Saturday and hot, and I had spent 2 days in a place that smelled of flowers and disinfectant, and my body wanted the water the way a body wants water. My mother was equally dead whether I sat in a dark room with the curtains drawn or swam in the sea under the sun. There is no arrangement of my Saturday that would have made her less dead. I understood this with total clarity, and I have never been able to make anyone else understand it, because they were not asking a question about my mother. They were asking a question about me, and the question was, will you perform for us the shape of a grieving son, and hold that shape for the correct number of days, so that we can feel that the world is orderly and that sons grieve? And my answer, without my ever meaning to give it, was no. Not a defiant no. Just the no of a man who did not know the question was being asked. At the beach I met a woman named Marie, whom I'd known a little before. We swam. The water was cold at first and then perfect. Afterward we lay on the sand and laughed about something I can no longer remember, some small stupid thing, and it felt good to laugh. And I did not think as I laughed that I was committing an act that would be used against me, because a man laughing on a beach is not, in any sane accounting, committing an act at all. In the evening we went to a movie, a comedy, and I laughed at that too, in the dark, anonymous, or so I believed. Someone a few towels down that afternoon, I would learn much later, had thought that a man laughing in the surf was worth recording, because they had already seen the first video by then, the funeral one which had gone up that morning while I slept, and they recognized me. So my ordinary Saturday became the second exhibit, the corroboration. The proof that the flat face at the funeral had not been shock or exhaustion or the private and unfilmable way a particular man carries a particular loss, but simply the truth of me, a man whose mother died on Thursday, laughing in the ocean on Saturday. What more, the caption asked, did anyone need to know? By Sunday night someone I have never met and never will had cut the 2 videos together. The funeral face, then the ocean laugh. 40 seconds, set to a piece of music chosen to tell you how to feel about it. A caption I won't repeat. By Monday morning, the number beneath it was larger than the population of the town I grew up in, and then larger than the county, and then it stopped being a number I could hold in my head as people and became instead a kind of weather, vast and moving and impersonal, and it was headed toward me, and I did not even know to look up. I slept well that Sunday night. I went to work Monday. It was the last ordinary sleep, and the last ordinary morning I would ever have. Chapter 3. I found out the way you find out about weather that has already arrived, all at once and from every direction. My phone, which was usually a quiet object, began behaving like a living thing that had swallowed a wasp. Messages from numbers I didn't know, then from numbers I did. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. What is wrong with you? My manager, before I'd even reached the office. Don't come in today, call me first. And under it all, when I finally looked, the video, and beneath the video the comments, scrolling faster than I could read, a single organism with 100,000 mouths, and every mouth saying in its own words the same thing, that I was not human, that there was something missing in me, that a man who could do what I had done, and what I had done was fail to cry, and then swim, was capable of anything and should be watched, and should be made to pay, though for what exactly no one could say, because I had not at that point broken any law. I had only broken the script. I want to describe what it is like, since I have the time now and no reason left to lie. It is not like being hated by a person. Being hated by a person is a relationship. It has a shape. You can stand across from it. This was not that. This was being hated by a climate. The hatred did not know me and did not want to know me. Knowing me would have ruined it, because a real man is always more complicated than the 40 seconds, and complication is the enemy of weather. What they hated was the clean thing they had made out of me, the 40-second man, and that man deserved everything they said, and I could not defend him because I did not know him either. We had that in common, the internet and I. Neither of us had ever met the man in the video. The difference was that they were certain they had, and I was certain I hadn't, and there were 100,000 of them and one of me, and certainty, I was learning, is not decided by who is right but by who is numerous. People I knew were asked to comment, and this was its own small education. Most said nothing, which I understood. Silence was the only safe move, and I would have advised it myself. But a few, to prove they were not like me, made statements. They said they had always sensed something cold in me. They said, looking back, there had been signs. And here is the strange part, they were not lying. They had reworked their memories to fit the 40 seconds, the way a river reworks its banks, and they now genuinely remembered a coldness that at the time they had called being calm, being steady, being easy to talk to. The same flatness that had made me a good listener for 20 years became, overnight, retroactively, the flatness of a man with something missing. Nothing about me had changed. Only the caption had changed, and the caption changed the past. I did not defend myself. I have thought about this a great deal, because it is the thing people found most damning of all, that I did not go online and weep, did not post the photograph of me as a boy with my mother, did not perform at last at the top of my lungs, the grief that would have ended the whole thing in an afternoon. Everyone was waiting for it. There is a ritual I have since learned, a precise liturgy of the apology and the tearful clarification, and had I performed it, had I said I was in shock, I wasn't myself. My mother meant everything to me. Here is a picture, here are my tears, I would have been forgiven, not because it was true but because it was the correct performance, and the correct performance is the only currency that spends in that country. I knew this. I understood it clearly, sitting in my apartment with the phone buzzing like a swallowed wasp, and I could not do it, not because I was proud, because it would have been a lie, and I had spent my whole life unable to produce that particular lie, the lie of a manufactured feeling, and I was not going to learn it now at 40 to appease a climate. I would rather be destroyed as what I was than saved as what I wasn't. I did not experience this as courage. It felt like the opposite of a choice. It felt like the simple inability of a fish to clap. So I said nothing, and my silence was read as the final proof. A grieving man would have screamed his grief. Only a hollow one stays quiet. They did not consider, the climate never considers, that a man might be quiet because he was telling the truth and the truth had no defense, that the honest have no good move in a game whose only winning play is a convincing lie. I sat in my apartment and watched the weather come, and I felt, if I am honest, and I have decided to always be honest now, a strange and terrible calm. Because for the first time in my life, the gap between what I was and what I was supposed to perform was not a small private embarrassment, a wrong line in a quiet room. It was the whole story. It was on every screen, and there was a clarity in that I had never had before. The world had finally said out loud the thing it had always half meant, that it did not want me to feel. It wanted me to perform. And I had failed the performance so completely, so publicly, that there was nothing left to protect, and a man with nothing left to protect is, I discovered, very close to a free man. Not yet, but close. I could see it from where I was, the way from the beach you can see the far shore you will never swim to, small and bright and certain, across an indifferent sea. Chapter 4. The weather might have passed. That is the thing no one believes now, but it's true. These storms move on, they always move on, because the climate is hungry and there is always a fresh face to make into a clean thing. And by the second week, the number under my video had stopped growing, and a different man in a different city had said a different unforgivable sentence. And the 100,000 mouths turned, all at once, the way a flock turns toward him. I felt it lift. I went outside for the first time in 9 days. I bought food. A man at the store looked at me a beat too long and then decided he'd been mistaken. I thought, it is ending. I was wrong, but I was right that it had been ending, and I have come to believe that this is the cruelest part of the whole design, that I was allowed to feel it lifting, so that what came next would have the full height to fall from. What came next was Raymond. Raymond lived on my floor. I knew him the way you know a man on your floor, his name, his dog, the sound of his television through the wall. He was not a good man, I think, though I am wary now of deciding who is good, having been decided about myself. He had a temper and a series of arrangements with people that I did not ask about. But he had been, during the 9 days, the one person who behaved toward me exactly as he always had, which is to say without any change at all, because Raymond did not use the internet and did not know I had become weather. And so, for 9 days, he was the only mirror in the world that still showed me my old face. I was grateful to him for that. Gratitude, I have learned, is also a thing that can be filmed and used. There was a man who had been coming around about a dispute of Raymond's. I never learned the whole of it, and it does not matter. And that it does not matter is the entire point of what happened. One evening, this man was in the stairwell of our building, and Raymond and I were coming up, and there were words, and then there was more than words. I will tell it exactly, because the exact version and the version that was shown are two different animals, and I have promised myself the exact one. The man came at Raymond. I stepped in not to defend Raymond as a cause, not out of loyalty to anything, but because a body was falling toward another body in a narrow space and mine was between them, the way you put a hand out when a glass tips before you have decided anything. There was a struggle of the stupid, close, breathless kind. The man went down. His head found the edge of a concrete step. It was very fast and very quiet, and then it was very still. He did not die. I need to say that because everyone believes he died, the way everyone believes the worst available version. And he did not. He was badly hurt, and he recovered mostly. But in the stairwell in that moment, none of us knew he would recover, and there is a camera in the stairwell, as there is a camera everywhere now, and the camera recorded a man on the ground and standing over him, not Raymond, whom no one knew but me. Me, whom everyone knew. The 42nd man. The one who didn't cry. And so the two facts were placed side by side, the way my funeral face had been placed beside my ocean laugh, and the space between them was filled as that space is always filled with a story. The story did not need to argue anything. It only needed to show in sequence. Here is a man who felt nothing at his mother's death. Here is that same man standing over a body. The climate did the rest. It did not ask why I was in the stairwell, or who had come at whom, or that my hand had gone out the way a hand goes out before thought. Those were complications, and the climate does not metabolize complications. It asked only the question it had been waiting 2 weeks to ask, the question my flat face had promised from the start. What else is a man like that capable of? And now it had its answer in stairwell footage, and the answer was this. When the police came, they asked me what happened, and I told them the exact version because it was true, and because I did not yet fully understand that the exact version was the one that would hurt me most. They asked why I had gotten involved in Raymond's dispute. I said it wasn't Raymond's dispute to me, that I hadn't been thinking of Raymond at all, that a man was falling, and I put out my hand. They wrote it down. I could see, even as they wrote, that it was the wrong answer, that the right answer, the human answer, was I was trying to protect my friend, or I panicked, or I was afraid. Any answer with a feeling in it. Any answer that gave them a familiar human shape to hold. But I hadn't been afraid, and Raymond wasn't exactly my friend, and I hadn't panicked. And to say any of those things would have been to perform again the feeling I did not have. And I had already decided, 2 weeks and a lifetime ago, that I was done performing feelings I did not have, whatever it cost. So I told them the true thing. A body was falling and my hand went out, and I watched the detective's pen stop, and I understood that I had just handed him, in my own words, the confession of a man with nothing inside him. Not a confession to the act, a confession to the emptiness. And it was the emptiness, not the act, that everyone had wanted confessed all along. Chapter 5. I was charged, and there was a trial, and the trial is where I understood the whole thing at last, all the way down. The way you understand the depth of the sea only when you are in it and cannot touch the bottom. I had imagined the trial would be about the stairwell. It was not, or it was, but only for the first morning. The stairwell facts were thin. The man had come at us. The footage was ambiguous. The injury was real, but the intent was impossible to prove, and a reasonable process would have looked at the narrow space and the falling bodies and arrived at something small and sad and accidental. But the trial was not a reasonable process. It was a place where the climate had been given a room and a robe and the power to make its weather permanent, and what the climate had always been trying to establish was never the stairwell. It was the funeral. The prosecutor played the video, my video, the 40 seconds. In a court of law, in a case about a stairwell, he played the footage of me not crying at my mother's funeral, and then he turned to the room and did not even have to make the argument out loud, because everyone in the room had already made it themselves, weeks ago at home on their phones. A man who does not weep for his own mother is a man capable of anything. That was the case. That was the whole case. The stairwell was the occasion, but the funeral was the charge, and I was not on trial for what my hand had done in a narrow space. I was on trial for what my face had failed to do in a hot room. I was on trial for not performing. My lawyer wanted me to perform now. It was not too late, he said. It is never too late for the ritual. That is the mercy the system offers and the trap it sets. Weep in the courtroom. Tell them your mother was your world. Bring the photograph. Say you were in shock, that grief takes people differently, that you have not slept since, that you see her face when you close your eyes. He wrote me lines. They were good lines. They would have worked. I could see on the jurors' faces the exact shape of the man they were hoping I would turn out to secretly be, and my lawyer's lines described that man precisely. All I had to do was become him for one afternoon, one performance. The whole climate would have exhaled at once. There, you see, he did feel it. He's one of us after all, and I would have gone home. And I could not. I sat in the courtroom and I understood, with the terrible calm that had been growing in me since the 9th day, that I would rather be convicted as what I was than acquitted as what I wasn't. Not from pride. I want to be exact because it matters, and because it is the only thing I am leaving behind. It was not pride, and it was not courage, and it was not even principle, quite. It was that the lie they wanted was the one lie I had never in my life been able to tell, the manufacture of a feeling on demand. And I found that even here, with everything at stake, with the far shore in sight, I still could not clap like a fish. And that this inability, which the world had spent 44 days calling the mark of a monster, was in fact the last honest thing about me, and possibly the only honest thing I had ever had, and I was not going to trade it at the end for a verdict. If I performed the grief to save myself, then the climate was right about me all along, that I was a man who would produce any feeling on demand for advantage. And if I refused, I was proving the one thing they had never once considered, that the reason I hadn't wept was that I did not fake things, not even to be loved, not even to be spared. The very flatness they were convicting me of was the proof of an honesty they had no category for and no interest in. So I stood when they asked if I had anything to say, and I said the true thing one more time into the silence. I said I had loved my mother. I said I had not cried. I said both of those were true at once, and that a world which could not hold both at once was not one I knew how to be saved by. And I sat down and I saw that I had lost, and I felt, God help me, almost free. Chapter 6. They found me guilty. The sentence was not death. We do not do that here for a stairwell, whatever the climate wished, but it was long, longer than the facts of the stairwell alone could ever have earned, and everyone in the room understood that the extra years were for the funeral. The judge, when he spoke, used the word remorse as in its absence, and I understood that remorse, too, is a performance with correct lines, and that I had refused to say them, and that the years were the price of the refusal. I did the arithmetic quietly while he spoke. It came out to most of what I had left. I noticed I was calm about this in a way that would have been, had anyone been filming my face, one final proof of everything they believed. They took me to a cell. It was small and clean and had a high window through which I could see a rectangle of sky, and I discovered that a rectangle of sky is enough, that a man can live a long time on a rectangle of sky if he stops expecting anything else. The first weeks I still had the habits of a free man. I waited for things. I measured the days against an outside that no longer had anything to do with me. Then slowly, I stopped. I learned the trick that the long-imprisoned all learn, which is to want only what the day contains. And the day contained the rectangle of sky, and the sounds of the building, and my own breathing, and I found, to my surprise, that this was not a deprivation but a kind of clarity, that stripped of everything I had been supposed to want, I could finally see the small, true shape of what a life actually is when you subtract the performance of it. A chaplain came. He came several times because it was his function to come, and because a man who had refused every offered feeling was, to him, a project, a locked door he took personally. He was not cruel. I want to be fair to him. I have decided to be fair to everyone now, since fairness costs me nothing and is one of the few things I can still spend. He wanted me to believe in something, his God, but really, underneath, any God would have satisfied him. Any story large enough to make my flatness mean something, to convert my silence into a soul in crisis rather than a soul simply, offensively, at rest. He wanted my tears the way the climate had wanted them, the way the court had wanted them, and I saw that they were all, chaplain and court and climate, asking the same single thing in different clothes. Feel what we tell you to feel in the form we recognize, and we will let you back in. He grew frustrated with me, the chaplain, in the last visit. He asked how I could face what was ahead without hope of something beyond it. He asked, almost angrily, whether I never wished for another life, a life after this one, a better one. And it was here, finally, that the calm in me became something more than calm, and I said the truest thing I have ever said, and I said it not to wound him but because he had asked honestly, and honesty was the only gift I had left to give anyone. I said that a life in which I could weep on command, in which my face performed on cue, in which I felt the correct feelings at the correct times and was therefore loved, that this life he was describing, this better life, was not better. It was only more comfortable, and that I would not wish for it because it would not be mine. The life that was mine was this one, the flat face, the true sentences, the rectangle of sky. I had been condemned for refusing to be someone else, and the refusing was the one thing in my whole existence I had done entirely on my own, without a script, and I would not now, at the end, wish it away in exchange for the warm, forgiven life of a man who clapped when he was told. He left. I don't think he understood. I did not need him to. That too was new, not needing to be understood, and it arrived in me like the last lock turning, and after it there were no more locks. Chapter 7. I have had a great deal of time since then, and I have spent it mostly at the window, looking at the rectangle of sky, and I want to set down what I have arrived at, because it is the only thing I have made in my life that was not asked of me by anyone. For a long time I was angry, not hot, never hot, but a low cold anger at the unfairness of it, at the 40 seconds, at the climate that had made me into weather and then punished the weather it had made. But the anger required me to believe that the world owed me a fair reading, that there was, somewhere, a correct account of me that had been unjustly overwritten, and one night at the window I understood that there was not. There is no correct account. There is no ledger where the true version of me is filed, waiting to be found and to clear my name. There is only the sky, which does not read me at all, which has never once looked down and formed an opinion, which held my mother and holds me, and will hold the man from the stairwell and the chaplain and the 100,000 mouths with exactly the same vast and even indifference, and asks none of us to perform, and forgives none of us, because it has never accused us, because it is not watching, because it was never watching, because there is no one watching and there never was. And I found that this was not a horror. This was the thing I had been reaching toward my whole life without a name for it. The world's indifference, which the chaplain feared and the climate could not tolerate, and the court tried to fill with a story, that indifference was the only honest thing in all of it, the only thing that had never once asked me to be other than I was. The sky does not require me to cry for my mother. The sky does not need my remorse converted into the correct number of tears. The sky let me love her flatly and without water, and did not deduct a single point. In all my life, it was the first and only thing that took me exactly as I came, and I understood at the window that if the universe is indifferent, then I am, for the first time, free of the script, free of the performance, free of the endless obligation to convert my private true feelings into the public legible shapes that other people can film and grade and forgive. They had taken everything from me, and in doing so they had accidentally taken the one thing that had always been heaviest, the need to be read correctly. I no longer needed it. The sky had shown me I never had. So I have opened myself in these last quiet days to the gentle indifference of the world, and finding it so like myself, so flat, so honest, so free of the demand to perform, I have felt for the first time that I was not a stranger in it after all, that I had only ever been a stranger to the people, who required the performance, and never to the world, which never did. The people made me weather. But the sky, which is the only thing that outlasts weather, had room in it for me exactly as I was, tearless and true, and always had. I have one wish left, and I will set it down, though I know how it will be read because I have stopped at last arranging myself to be read well. My wish is only this, that on the day it ends for me, whenever and however that is, there be a crowd, a great crowd with all their phones raised, all their 100,000 mouths open, filming, captioning, hating the clean flat man they made and never met. Let them come. Let them record it. I want them there, not because I need their hatred, but because I have finally stopped needing anything from them at all. And a man who needs nothing from the crowd is the one thing the crowd can never touch, and I would like them to see, in the last flat honest frame they ever take of me, a man they could not make perform, even at the end, even for his life. Let that be the video. Let that one go viral. It is the only true thing they will ever have filmed of me, and it will say, to anyone left who can still read a face without a caption telling them what it means. Here was a man who would not cry on cue, and who was, for exactly that reason, and against everything they were sure of, not empty at all. The end.